Hello, welcome to my session on B2B service transformation, how to move from products to services and solutions. Industry after industry is being commoditized. And to actually make money, you have to move up the value chain. And that very often means to move into services and solutions to differentiate yourself and build a competitive advantage. Now, Power by the Hour is a really good example of a company that moved from selling engines to leasing engines to now with 80% of revenues being generated from Rolls-Royce operating engines on their customers' aircraft. And it completely managed to sidestep a lot of low-cost repair and maintenance competition in the process. Other great examples are BASF paints. They used to sell paints by the hectoliter to car manufacturers for painting cars. Today, what BASF does, they put entire paint shops into their customers' factories. And they're billing now by number of cars painted. Yeah, so it's not so easy anymore for a car manufacturer to go out for tender and tender hectoliters of paint. Hilti is another great company, completely commoditized business of tools and power drills and all of this. So what they're doing now, they put RFID on all of their equipment and they run fantastic solutions now for construction sites by delivering all of the tools needed. Again, from selling low-cost, completely commoditized hardware, they're today a valued partner and solution provider of many construction firms that put up buildings, put up highways, and so on. Now, the question is, how do you move from selling tools to selling solutions, from selling paint to selling paint solutions, from selling engines to actually running engines? And that is not an easy journey. This is something that takes a lot of time. And let me share with you sort of a framework on how to think about going there from a basic product to really going to a solution. What you see on this chart here is usually most companies have to start with what we call product lifecycle services. And that is everything you need when you buy a product that includes on consultation, configuration, installation, training, upgrading, repair and maintenance, and end-of-life services for this machinery and tools and products, right? And you can see that a lot of this is how this is being priced, these kind of services. It's product focused, so it's all related to the original product you sold. And then it is input based. So you're charging by parts and by man hours for repair and maintenance. So that's, if I take an aircon service, for example, yeah, you sell the aircon, then you install the aircon, and then you clean the aircon, and then you repair the aircon when there's a problem. Now, the next category you can think about getting into is what we call asset productivity services. So this is one level above. And here to show you're not anymore charging labor and parts, but you're now output and performance focused. So if I take the aircon example, I mean, now what you're guaranteeing is uptime of the aircon. And I hope you can see now you go into sensors, into IoT, on remote maintenance and preventive maintenance and analytics and all of these kinds of things. And you can see the output-based pricing is very simple to see. I mean, you just imagine a 90% uptime is a lot cheaper than a 98% uptime, which is a lot cheaper than a 99.99% uptime. So you're now charging really for this asset being operational, and you have to work very hard behind the scenes to be able to deliver this, right? So this is the asset productivity services as a big category. Now, the next big category is what we call process support services. Now, you're in the middle of the operations of your customer, right? So that means you're in the factory and is often consultation based. So what you're doing is you're looking at the customer process, and given your knowledge, you help the customer how to do things better. So for example, if we go back to our aircon example, you can say, I go into your facility and I tell you what you need to do to get cool air and to get clean air, and to do this with minimum of cost and electricity consumption. So you may put stuff in, like recommend sensors in rooms, so if nobody is in there, you increase the temperature. You may do things like put infrared and UV screens onto windows. Where you place the aircon. So all of how often you should clean the aircon and all of these kinds of things. So you go into the facility and you do a consulting service almost on how should you go about optimizing your aircon solution you have in-house. And that's typically input focused. Again, here the pricing, because it's like a consulting service. You charge expenses and you charge man hours. Now the highest level here, if you will, is outsourcing and solution services. So now you're in the customer's facility, you're completely process focused, and you take over responsibility, meaning you are in charge of the output and the performance of that service. And this is then the Rolls-Royce example, power by the hour, where you run the engine, all the costs associated with it are your cost. Any repair is your problem. And if the client's aircraft are out of service, it means you are liable. So you have huge risks here now, especially if you are in a mission critical type of service, which often they are. And they're beautiful business models. Why? You are now truly a critical partner of your customer. You're in the middle of their processes. It's very hard for them to switch you. So there's a mutual dependency here, but that also comes often, you need to build the trust. And I've seen many businesses that move from a completely commoditized space here into creating much more value for the customer. I mean, for example, DHL, you can outsource entire cold chains and supply chain solutions to DHL. DKSH is a large Swiss distributor, very strong in Asia they do pharmaceuticals, FMCG. For example, Levi is one of their customers, Levi Jeans. Lindt Chocolate is a customer, but they also have technology, their pharmacy. And their value proposition is that they really look at what they call market expansion services. Meaning, in the old days, what they did for you is the import and maybe distribution, and then they started labeling. Then for medicine, they started getting the local certifications and all of that, licenses. But today they say, they go to Levi and say, go with me. I make sure you're at the right point of sale, you're displayed the correct way, you're sold the correct way. What I'm helping you to do is expand your market, build market share. And for example, in pharmaceuticals, nobody has a wider coverage of pharmacies than DKSH in Thailand. I think they have over 15,000 pharmacies they cover in their distribution. So they completely took over everything it takes from a FMCG or Levi Jeans or pharmaceutical, from the border to repackaging, relabeling, to getting it into the basket on the customer end, right? So I mean, this is what we want. We want to move into those solutions where we add critical value to the customer. And that also gives us bargaining power in terms of margins and pricing. So we earn more than when we just deliver very commoditized type of services that get tendered ever so often. So this, of course, is a long journey. And how you do this here, I mean, I always say you start with product lifecycle services. If you do not do the basic maintenance, installation, all of this right, nobody's going to buy anything else from you. So the lifecycle services are the foundation. You need great quality here. If you do this well, then you can move up to asset productivity services, because you understand how to keep the aircon going, right? If you do that well, then it's time to understand more how this equipment and services are used in customer processes. So you learn much more on how you can add value there and where the value is. And you do these 3 things right, then you can say, hey, customer, I'm happy to take over. I carry the risk. Go with me, and you will save a lot of money. You have much better quality than if you do it alone. We do a lot more innovation. We have a lot more scale, a lot more scope. Now, what many companies want to do, they want to go direct from product lifecycle services to outsourcing and solutions. I've not seen companies doing that well. You have to build a solid foundation before you really go into outsourcing. So do your product lifecycle correct, do your asset productivity correct, and do your process correct. Now, this is the big picture, the big journey, but then you may ask, so what do I do now, right? I mean, how do I get there? How do I build all of this expertise? So here are a few pointers. So you can start with, look, if you are a larger company, maybe a global company, what I have seen is that different country organization very often, that could be your own, could be distributors, could be value-added service providers, that they somehow manage to find pockets where they can create real value for their customers. So flush those out, explore system-wide, company-wide, where are there great ideas we might want to explore for the overall organization. The next is, I mean, the one thing I hear in Asia all the time and in the rest of the world is, oh, customers are happy to pay for the machine, but they're not happy to pay for the service. So I think my experience is it's very good to specify what you delivered. So how much you did in the configuration and customization, how many engineering hours and whatever were burnt on doing that, how many hours of training and training packages and solutions you offered, and so on and so forth. It helps to put all of that on paper on the invoice. It helps you to communicate that value to it. Look, this is all the stuff I'm doing for you, even if now you don't invoice it as yet because you discount it. So you write it on the invoice, but you discount it. The next is, of course, I mean, over time, you want to see how can I move from free to fee. And I mean, the basic idea should be there is no free lunch. So you want to get stuff for free, you have to give me something too. So you give me volume. You are a reference site for me. So allow me to try new services and stuff in your site. By invoicing it, and even if you discount it, you raise awareness of what you're doing. You can then over time move to a menu where you say, look, you know, these are these 6 services I offer. 3 of them I give them for free. If you need number 4 and number 5, I charge you for them. I can say, look, basic engineering services are for free, but if you need to tap our experts, we charge you by the hour. So these are all options you can play here on how you can eventually move from free to fee. Now, the next is installed base and also the data generated by this base. Very often, if you're a large provider in your industry, you have an immense potential competitive advantage by doing stuff only you can do because only you have the critical mass for that. I mean, if you want to give a 2-hour response time to a machine breakdown and you're all over the world, you can really only truly do this like Rolls-Royce if you have a massive installed base. Otherwise, the cost would be prohibitive. Usage data and analysis. I mean, a lot of the value in outsourcing to you is because you do stuff based on preventive maintenance, preemptive repair. Many of those things wouldn't be possible if you didn't have these data and access and this installed base. So think creatively, given I am the biggest in this industry, what can I do with it? The next is from a design part of view. I mean, service is always unstructured, right? I mean, structure it. You want to invoice it, you have to structure it. So you have to think very, very hard on what are the modules I want to sell to you. And then each module, so there's a training module and there's a tiering for this. What is the basic, advanced, and what is the professional part of it? The tiering, maybe response time, maybe I tier this by 30 minutes and 6 hours and 24 hours. Because customer needs are different and I need some way to invoice it and also communicate. So modularization tangibilizes the stuff you do. I can now put it on my website, I can put it on my apps, and I can price it, and I can put it on the invoice. Okay. The next really is then service factory approach. If each time you handcraft a solution is going to be terribly expensive. So service factory means you standardize processes, and so there's a base process and there are modules you attach to it, and then there are service tiers or service levels attached to them. And now I can then hopefully automate large parts of it, and everyone, I can de-skill it. So it's much easier, much cheaper to produce, to sell, and be cost effective. Now, risk management is a huge issue, because if I sell you a stuff and then I just charge you based on repair, and I'm not responsible for your assembly line being down, or your aircraft being grounded, or you're not having your supply chain being disrupted, then I don't carry risk, right? But the minute you say, outsource this to me, you are responsible, you are liable. And so that means the partnership, the contracting, the KPIs become so much more important. And what I find initially, very often, if you haven't done this before, you might want to have an open book agreement with your clients and build this common trust that you can really show where the costs are and where the risks are and manage this. Now, the last point is many of you would be so used to typical product development where the bulk of the costs are in concept and development, and then launch and follow up doesn't tend to be so costly. For services, it's exactly the other way around. Concept and development tend to be fast and easy, relatively easy, and also cheaper. But the main cost is going to be when the rubber hits the road. That means you install stuff in your customer site and then things don't work, right? So that is where a lot of the time will be to then make your solutions workable in the customer's environment. And so that means a lot of the re-engineering, the rework, and the fine-tuning and the follow-up is going to happen then. Now, so key takeaways. So you can see, I mean, I hope I introduced you sort of a pathway, how you can think about moving from basic services and product lifecycle services into asset productivity services, into support services, and then finally into outsourcing and solutions. And what I would like you to do is now think through and sort of recap and think, given what you've heard, what is the biggest opportunity here you see for your organization after what you've learned? What do you think is the biggest challenge here for you? And finally, within your realm of influence, what actions can you actually take after having watched this video? So I wish you good luck and all the best for your journey from products to solutions. Thank you.